The crystal chandelier cast diamonds of light across the marble floor of the grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel. Amelia Rose stood at the edge of the crowd, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her borrowed black dress. She had never imagined she would be here, surrounded by Manhattan's elite. But when the Children's Hospital, where she worked as a nurse, asked for volunteers to help with their annual charity gala, she couldn't say no. Her 5-year-old son, Oliver, was safely tucked away at her neighbor Mrs. Patterson's apartment in Brooklyn, probably already fast asleep with his favorite stuffed elephant. Amelia checked her phone for the 3rd time in 10 minutes, a habit she had developed since becoming a single mother. The weight of responsibility never left her shoulders, not even for one evening. The auction was in full swing, with wealthy bidders casually throwing around amounts that could cover her rent for a year. Amelia tried to focus on her duties, ensuring the silent auction tables were organized and the donation forms were readily available. But her mind kept wandering to the pile of bills. Sitting on her kitchen counter at home, she was arranging a display of photographs showing the children who had benefited from the hospital's programs when she heard a voice that made her blood freeze. "I'll take the art therapy program for $50,000. Amelia's hands stilled on the photograph she was holding. That voice, deep, confident, with just a hint of the Southern accent he had tried so hard to hide during their college years. Slowly, she turned around, her heart hammering against her ribs. James Harrison stood 30 feet away, commanding the attention of everyone around him. At 32, he had grown into the man she had always known he would become. Tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair was perfectly styled, and his tailored tuxedo probably cost more than she made in 3 months. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Those same piercing blue eyes that had once looked at her, like she was his entire world. He was bidding on programs for sick children with the same casual ease that other people bought coffee. The crowd around him murmured appreciatively as he raised his paddle again, increasing his bid to $75,000 for a new pediatric wing. Amelia tried to slip away, to disappear into the kitchen area where the catering staff worked, but her legs felt like lead. 6 years. 6 years since she had seen him, since that terrible night when everything fell apart. 6 years of raising their son alone, of lying awake at night, wondering if she had made the right choice in never telling him about Oliver. Amelia. Her name spoken in that familiar voice made her turn around despite every instinct telling her to run. James was walking toward her, his expression a mixture of shock and something that looked almost like relief. The crowd around them seemed to fade into background noise. James. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. He stopped a few feet away from her, his eyes searching her face as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. "I can't believe you're here. You look," he paused, his gaze taking in her appearance. She knew she looked different from the carefree college student he had once known. 6 years of single motherhood had carved new lines around her eyes, but there was also a strength there that hadn't existed before. "You look beautiful," he finished softly. Amelia felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had forgotten how he could make her feel with just a few words, how his presence could fill up all the empty spaces inside her. "What are you doing here?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Supporting the hospital. My company, Harrison Tech, is one of the major donors," gestured toward a banner displaying corporate sponsors. "But I should be asking you the same question. Last I heard, you were in California." The lie she had told him 6 years ago. She had let him believe she was moving to the West Coast for a job, when in reality, she had never left New York, never left the city where they had met, fallen in love, and where everything had gone so terribly wrong. "I came back," she said simply. A few years ago, James studied her face, and she could see the questions forming in his eyes. Questions she wasn't ready to answer. Not here, not now, not when she still hadn't figured out how to explain 6 years of silence. "Amelia, we need to talk," he said, taking a step closer. "There are things I need to tell you, things I should have said years ago." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed in her small clutch purse. "Text from Mrs. Patterson. Oliver woke up asking for you. Told him you'd be home soon." The mention of her son's name, even in her own thoughts, sent a jolt of panic through her. She glanced up to find James watching her reaction curiously. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "I have to go," she said quickly, clutching her purse tighter. "I'm sorry, James, but I really have to leave." She turned to walk away, but his hand gently caught her arm. The touch sent electricity through her entire body, just like it always had. "Please," he said, and there was something vulnerable in his voice that made her pause. "Can I at least have your number? Can we meet for coffee tomorrow?" Amelia looked up into those blue eyes and saw the boy she had fallen in love with at 21. The one who had held her during thunderstorms and promised they would build a life together. But she also saw the man he had become, the billionaire who lived in a world so far removed from her reality that they might as well be from different planets. "I don't think that's a good idea," she whispered. "Why not?" The question came out, more forcefully than he had intended, drawing glances from nearby guests. He lowered his voice. "Amelia, you disappeared from my life without a real explanation. Don't I deserve to know why? The guilt that had been her constant companion for?" 6 years pressed down on her chest like a weight. He was right. Did deserve answers. But those answers came with a 5-year-old boy who had James's eyes and his stubborn chin. A boy who asked questions about his daddy that Amelia had never known how to answer. "It's complicated," she said finally. "Then help me understand the complications." Before she could respond, a waiter approached with a silver tray. "Excuse me, Miss Rose? There's a phone call for you at the front desk. They said it was urgent." Amelia's heart leaped into her throat. Urgent calls when she was away from Oliver were every mother's nightmare. "I'm sorry," she said to James, already moving toward the front of the ballroom. "I have to take this." He hurried through the crowd, her borrowed heels clicking against the marble floor. Behind the front desk, a hotel employee handed her the phone with a sympathetic smile. "Amelia?" Mrs. Patterson's voice was tight with worry. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but Oliver has a fever. It came on suddenly, and he's asking for you. I think you should come home." "I'm on my way," Amelia said, already looking around for her coat. "Give him some children's Tylenol if you have it, and I'll be there in 30 minutes. She ended the call and turned to find James standing behind her, concern written across his face. "Is everything okay?" he asked again. "My son is sick," she said without thinking, and froze as she realized what she had just revealed. James's expression shifted from concern to confusion. "Your son?" Amelia felt the walls closing in around her. This wasn't how she had imagined this moment, in her rare brave moments when she had pictured telling James the truth. She had envisioned careful conversations, explanations, time to prepare. Both of them for the magnitude of what she was about to say. "Yes," she said quietly. "I have a son." Something flickered in James's eyes, a calculation she could almost see happening. "How old?" The question hung in the air between them like a sword. Amelia met his gaze and saw the exact moment when understanding dawned in his expression. 5, she whispered. The color drained from James's face. His hand reached out to steady himself against the marble desk. 5 years old. It wasn't a question. It was a statement loaded with the weight of years of missed birthdays, first steps he hadn't witnessed, bedtime stories he hadn't read. "James, I can explain, but not here. Not now. My son is sick, and I need to get home to him." "Our son," he said, his voice barely audible. Amelia closed her eyes, feeling the secret she had carried for so long finally cracking open. "Yes," she admitted, "our son." The silence stretched between them, filled with 6 years of unspoken words and unanswered questions. Around them, the charity gala continued, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses creating a surreal backdrop to the moment that would change both their lives forever. "What's his name?" James asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Oliver," she said softly. Oliver James Rose. The middle name hit him like a physical blow. She had given their son his name, even after everything that had happened between them, even after she had decided to raise him alone. "I need to see him," James said. "Suddenly, I need to meet my son, James. Please, not tonight. He's sick, and this is all so sudden. Let me get him feeling better, and then we can talk about how to handle this." "Handle this?" The words came out sharper than he intended. Amelia, I've missed 5 years of his life. 5 years. How exactly do you handle that? She could see the anger building in his eyes. The same anger she had feared would consume everything good between them if she had told him the truth years ago. This was exactly why she had stayed silent, why she had convinced herself that some secrets were kinder than the truth. I know you're angry, she said, reaching for her coat. And you have every right to be. But right now, Oliver needs me, and I won't have this conversation while my son is sick and scared. James stood there, watching her gather her things, his mind reeling from the revelation that he was a father. A father. The word felt foreign and wonderful and terrifying. All at once? Give me your address, he said suddenly. What? Your address? I'm not waiting days or weeks for you to decide when it's convenient to let me meet my son. If he's sick, maybe I can help. I have connections to the best pediatricians in the city. Amelia hesitated. Opening that door felt like stepping off a cliff with no idea where she would land. But Oliver was sick, and she'd been handling everything. Alone for so long that the offer of help, even from the man whose absence had defined their lives, was tempting. Brooklyn Heights, she said finally. Apartment 4B at 127 Remsen Street. James pulled out his phone and typed in the address. I'll give you an hour to get home and settled. Then I'm coming over. James, I don't think you understand how different. My life is from yours. My apartment is small, and Oliver doesn't know about you. I can't just spring this on him while he's not feeling well. Then how do you suggest we do this? He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, the same one he had worn in college. Because I'm not walking away from this, Amelia. I'm not walking away from him. The determination in his voice was absolute, and Amelia realized that the boy she had fallen in love with had grown into a man who was used to getting what he wanted. But this wasn't a business deal or a corporate acquisition. This was their son's life, and hers. Give me tonight, she said. Let me take care of Oliver, and figure out how to explain this to him. Come tomorrow afternoon, around 2. He should be feeling better by then, and I'll have had time to prepare him. James looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression must have convinced him. Tomorrow at 2, he agreed. But Amelia, this conversation is far from over. I need to understand why you made the choice you made, and more importantly, I need to understand how we move forward from here. She nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. As she walked toward the exit, she could feel his eyes on her back, burning with questions and accusations and something that might have been longing. Outside, the October air was crisp and cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the hotel ballroom. As Amelia waited for her taxi, she realized that her carefully constructed life was about to be turned upside down. Tomorrow, James Harrison would meet his son, and nothing would ever be the same again. The taxi ride back to Brooklyn gave her 30 minutes to figure out how to explain to a 5-year-old that his daddy, the man he had asked about countless times, was real and wanted to meet him. 30 minutes to prepare for the conversation that would either heal the wounds of the past or tear open new ones that might never close. As the city lights blurred past the taxi window, Amelia closed her eyes and whispered a prayer for strength, for wisdom, and for the courage to face whatever tomorrow would bring. The fever had broken by morning. But Oliver still looked pale as he picked at his cereal. Amelia sat across from him at their small kitchen table, nursing her 3rd cup of coffee and trying to find the right words to change both their lives forever. "Mama, why do you look scared?" Oliver asked, his green eyes studying her face with the intuitive wisdom that children possessed. Amelia set down her coffee cup and reached across to smooth his dark hair. "I'm not scared, sweetheart. Just thinking about something important I need to tell you." "Is it about the man from the picture?" The question hit her like lightning. "What picture, Oliver?" He scrambled down from his chair and ran to his bedroom, returning with a worn photograph that Amelia thought she had hidden well enough. It showed her and James at their college graduation, both of them laughing as confetti fell around them. She had kept it tucked inside one of her nursing textbooks. But apparently her son was more observant than she had realized. "I found it when you were at work, and Mrs. Patterson let me get your stethoscope to play doctor," Oliver said, climbing back into his chair. He looks like me, doesn't he? Amelia's heart clenched as she looked at the photograph, then at her son. The resemblance was undeniable. Oliver had inherited James's strong jaw, his thick dark hair, and most prominently, those striking blue eyes that seemed to see right through to a person's soul. Yes, she said softly. He does look like you. Is he my daddy? The simple question carried the weight of 5 years of bedtime stories where the daddy was always away on business trips. 5 years of carefully crafted explanations about why. Some families look different from others. Yes, Oliver, he's your daddy. Oliver nodded as if this confirmed something he had already suspected. Why doesn't he live with us? This was the question Amelia had been dreading. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that love sometimes isn't enough? That sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who tear your world apart? It's complicated, baby. When you were born, Daddy and I had some problems, and I thought it would be better if we lived separately for a while. But 5 years is a really long time, Mama. Yes, it is. Oliver studied the photograph again, tracing James's face with his small finger. Does he know about me? Does now, Amelia said, taking a deep breath. And he wants to meet you. God. He's coming here today if that's okay with you? Really? Oliver's face lit up with excitement, but then uncertainty crept in. What if he doesn't like me? Amelia pulled her son into her lap, holding him close. Oliver James rose. You are the most amazing, intelligent, kind little boy in the entire world. Anyone would be lucky to know you, especially your daddy. Gave me his name, Oliver said, snuggling against her chest. I did. Even when we weren't together, I wanted you to have a part of him. They spent the morning cleaning the apartment, which didn't take long, given its modest size. Oliver helped. By organizing his toys and books, chattering excitedly about what he would show his daddy, Amelia found herself looking at their home through James's eyes and feeling embarrassed by the worn furniture and peeling paint in the hallway. At exactly 2 o'clock, the buzzer rang. Amelia's heart hammered as she pressed the intercom button. James, come up 4th floor. She opened the apartment door and listened to his footsteps on the stairs. Oliver stood beside her, suddenly shy now that the moment had arrived. He had changed into his best shirt, a navy blue polo that brought out his eyes. James appeared at the top of the stairs, carrying a large gift bag and what looked like a medical kit. He had traded his tuxedo for dark jeans and a gray sweater, but he still looked impossibly out of place in the narrow hallway, with its fluorescent lighting and peeling wallpaper. Hi, he said, his eyes moving from Amelia to the small boy standing half-hidden behind her legs. Hi, Oliver whispered back. James crouched down to Oliver's eye level, and Amelia watched as father and son studied each other for the first time. The resemblance was even more striking now, seeing them side by side. You must be Oliver, James said softly. I'm James. I'm very glad to meet you. I know who you are, Oliver said, stepping out from behind his mother. You're my daddy. That simple statement hit James like a physical blow. His eyes filled with tears that he quickly blinked away. Yes, I am, and I've been wanting to meet you for a very long time. But you didn't know about me, Oliver said with startling directness. James glanced up at Amelia, then back at his son. No, I didn't know about you. But now that I do, I hope we can be friends. Oliver considered this seriously. What's in the bag? James smiled, the first real smile Amelia had seen from him since the previous night. Would you like to see? They moved into the small living room, where James presented Oliver with a collection of gifts that probably cost more than Amelia's monthly salary. There was a tablet computer loaded with educational games, a remote-controlled helicopter building, blocks, and several books about science and space exploration. Mama, look, Oliver exclaimed, immediately drawn to the helicopter. Can we fly it? Maybe later, when you're feeling completely better, Amelia said. What do you say to James? Thank you, Daddy. The word hit James like a lightning bolt. He looked at Amelia with wonder and something that might have been accusation. This little boy was calling him Daddy as if it was the most natural thing in the world, and James had missed 5 years of hearing it. I also brought something else, James said, pulling out a small medical bag. Your mama mentioned you had a fever last night. I brought a friend of mine, Dr. Rodriguez. She's waiting downstairs to check on you if that's okay." Amelia stiffened. "James, that wasn't necessary. Oliver's feeling much better." "I know, but I wanted to make sure. Dr. Rodriguez specializes in pediatric care, and she made a house call as a favor to me." Before Amelia could protest further, Oliver piped up. "I like doctors. Mama is a nurse, so I know lots about medicine." "Your mama is a nurse?" James looked at Amelia with surprise. "I thought you studied business in college. I changed career paths after." She paused, glancing at Oliver. "After some life changes." James seemed to understand that this was a conversation for later. Dr. Rodriguez's examination revealed that Oliver was indeed on the mend, with just the tail end of a minor virus. She pronounced him healthy and energetic, much to Oliver's delight. After the doctor left, the three of them sat in the living room, an awkward tension filling the space despite Oliver's chatter about school and his friends and his favorite cartoons. James listened to everything with intense focus, as if he was trying to memorize every detail about his son's life. "Oliver, why don't you show Daddy your room?" Amelia suggested when she saw James glancing around their small space with barely concealed shock. As Oliver dragged James down the short hallway to his bedroom, Amelia could hear their voices mixing together. Oliver's high, excited tones and James's deeper responses as he examined the drawings covering the walls, a small collection of books and the carefully organized toys. "Mama reads to me every night," Oliver was saying. "Sometimes when I can't sleep, she tells me stories about brave knights and dragons." "What's your favorite story?" James asked. "The one about the knight who goes on a long journey and comes home to his family." "Mama always gets sad when she tells that one, though." Amelia closed her eyes, remembering all the knights she had invented. That story, unconsciously weaving her own hopes into fairy tales for her son. When they returned to the living room, James's expression had changed. There was something harder there, a determined set to his jaw that Amelia recognized from their college days when he was facing a particularly difficult challenge. "Oliver, would you like to watch a movie while your mama and I talk?" he asked. "I watched the one about the robots." James helped him set up the tablet with the movie, then turned to Amelia. "Can we step outside for a minute?" They moved on to the small fire escape that served as her balcony, the October air crisp and cold around them. Manhattan glittered in the distance, a reminder of the vast gap between their worlds. "Why?" James asked without preamble. "Why? What? Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe you were moving to California? Why have you raised our son?" He gestured toward the modest apartment. "In conditions like this, when you knew I could have provided for both of you." The accusations she had expected, but they still stung. "Conditions like this? James, this is a good neighborhood. Oliver is loved and cared for and safe. He's sleeping on a twin bed in a room the size of my closet. You're working as a nurse, which I'm sure is noble, but you're struggling financially. I can see it in the worn furniture, the careful way you budget even small purchases. Meanwhile, I could have given him everything. Everything except a father who chose him over his family's money," Amelia shot back. The words hung between them, like a weapon. James stepped back as if she had physically struck him. "What are you talking about?" Amelia wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "Do you really think I don't know what happened, James? Do you think I didn't hear about your engagement to Catherine Whitmore 3 weeks after I left?" "Catherine?" James looked genuinely confused. "What does Catherine have to do with this? Your father made it very clear that I wasn't suitable for the Harrison family heir. He offered me money to disappear, James. A lot of money, and the promise that you would be cut off from everything if I didn't take it." The color drained from James's face. "My father did what?" "He came to see me the day after I told you I was pregnant. He knew before you did, James. He had been having me followed, having my background investigated. He knew about my student loans, my mother's medical bills, my father's gambling debts. He knew exactly which pressure points to hit." James gripped the railing of the fire escape, his knuckles white. "What did he say to you?" "He said that if I truly loved you, I would disappear. He said that you were destined for great things, that you would inherit a business empire worth billions, but only if you married the right kind of woman. Someone from the right family, with the right connections, and you believed him? James. He offered me $500,000 to leave and never contact you again. $500,000, with the promise of more if I needed it for medical care or education. But more than that, he showed me the engagement announcement that had already been written. Your engagement to Catherine Whitmore, pending board approval.
Dad.
Announcement was never supposed to be published. It was a contingency plan, something the board insisted on having ready in case the stock prices fluctuated. I never agreed to marry Catherine, but you didn't fight for me either. The accusation hit its target. James turned away, staring out at the city lights. You left Amelia. You packed up and disappeared without giving me a chance to fight for anything. I was 22 years old and pregnant and terrified, she said, her voice breaking. Your father made it clear that loving you would destroy your future. He said that if I stayed, if I had the baby, you would be cut off from the family fortune and the company. He said you would end up resenting me and our child for costing you everything you had worked for, so you took the money. No, the word came out forcefully. I never took a penny of his money. I left because I thought it was the right thing to do, but I was too proud to take payment for walking away from the man I loved. James turned back to her, studying her face in the dim light from the apartment windows. Then how did you survive? How did you pay for medical care, for the apartment, for everything Oliver needed? I worked. 3 jobs for the first 2 years. Waitressing, cleaning offices at night, taking online classes to become a nurse. Mrs. Patterson watched Oliver during the day when she could. It wasn't easy, but we managed. Jesus, Amelia. James ran his hands through his hair. All this time I thought you had chosen a new life over us. I thought you had decided that whatever we had wasn't worth the complications of my family's expectations. I made that choice for you, she said quietly. Maybe it was the wrong choice, but I thought I was protecting you from having to choose. Between your son and your inheritance, my inheritance. James laughed bitterly. Do you know what I've done with my inheritance, Amelia? I've spent the last 6 years building a company that I can control completely. It doesn't depend on my family's approval or money. I've been preparing to walk away from Harrison Industries entirely. Why? Because I learned something about myself in business school, something that became crystal clear after you left. I learned that I'm not willing to sacrifice the people I love for money or power or social standing. But by the time I figured that out, you were gone, and I had no way to find you. They stood in silence for a moment, both processing the weight of years of misunderstandings and missed opportunities. I searched for you, James said finally. For 2 years, I hired investigators. I called every mutual friend we had. I even tracked down your college roommate. Everyone said you had moved to California and didn't want to be found. Your father was very thorough in covering my tracks. My father. The words came out like a curse. He's going to have some explaining to do. James? No. Amelia turned to face him fully. Your family has already done enough damage. I don't want Oliver caught in the middle of a war between you and your father. Oliver's already in the middle of it. He's been in the middle of it since the day he was born. He just didn't know it. James moved closer to her. Amelia, I want to be part of his life. I want to be part of your life. I know I have 6 years to make up for, and I know it won't be easy, but I'm not walking away again. It's not that simple. Oliver and I have a routine, a life that works for us. You can't just swoop in and rearrange everything because you've decided you want to be a father. I'm not trying to rearrange everything. I'm trying to find my place in the life you've built. Your place? Amelia shook her head. James, you live in a different world than we do. You have responsibilities, business deals, social obligations. How exactly do you see this working? I see it working however it needs to work. If that means I spend my weekends in Brooklyn instead of at charity galas, then that's what I'll do. If it means I learn to cook mac and cheese and help with homework instead of reviewing quarterly reports, then I'll learn. And when your family finds out? When they discover you have a son with the woman they paid to disappear? James was quiet for a long moment, considering. Then they'll have to accept it, or they'll have to accept that I'm prepared to walk away from them completely. You say that now, But when it comes down to actually making that choice, I already made that choice, Amelia. I made it the day I walked away from Catherine Whitmore and told my father I wouldn't be anyone's puppet. I've spent the last 6 years building something independent of them, something that's mine alone. The only thing I've been missing is a reason to use that independence. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body in the cold October air. You and Oliver are that reason? 3 weeks later, James Harrison stood in the marble lobby of Harrison Industries, adjusting his tie and preparing for the most important battle of his life. The emergency board meeting he had requested was about to begin, and he knew that once he walked through those glass doors, there would be no turning back. In his briefcase were documents that would change everything, custody papers he intended to file for Oliver, financial statements proving his independence from the family company, and a resignation letter that would sever his ties with Harrison Industries permanently if necessary. But most importantly, tucked in his jacket pocket, was a small velvet box containing an engagement ring he had purchased that morning. The past 3 weeks had been a revelation. Every evening after work, he had driven to Brooklyn to spend time with Oliver and Amelia. He had learned that his son was exceptionally bright, with a curiosity about the world that reminded James of himself at that age. Oliver asked. Endless questions about everything from how helicopters flew to why the moon changed shapes, and James found himself researching topics he had never considered just to provide adequate answers. He had also learned that Amelia had grown into an extraordinary woman. The girl he had fallen in love with in college had been sweet and optimistic, but the woman she had become was strong in ways that took his breath away. She had raised their son with limited resources but unlimited love, creating a home that radiated warmth despite its modest circumstances. More than that, he had fallen in love with her all over again. Not just with the memory of who she had been, but with who she was now. The way she made Oliver laugh during bath time, the way she patiently helped him with his homework, the way she tucked him in every night with stories that sparked his imagination. James had begun staying for dinner most evenings, initially bringing takeout from expensive restaurants, until Amelia gently suggested that Oliver preferred simple foods. Now James found himself looking forward to grilled cheese sandwiches, tomato soup, more than any 5-star meal. But their happiness existed in a fragile bubble, threatened by the growing pressure from James's family. His father had been calling daily, demanding explanations for James's frequent absences from company events. His mother had started making pointed comments about appropriate social connections and the importance of maintaining the family's reputation. Most concerning of all, his younger brother David had mentioned seeing James in Brooklyn, questioning why the heir to Harrison Industries was spending so much time in what David called questionable neighborhoods. James knew it was only a matter of time before his family discovered the truth about Oliver and Amelia. He had decided to control that revelation on his own terms. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt longer than usual. The boardroom was filled with the familiar faces that had shaped his life since childhood: his father, Nathaniel Harrison, his mother Patricia, his brother David, and the collection of senior executives and family advisors who wielded enormous influence over the Harrison empire. "Thank you all for coming," James said as he took his seat at the massive conference table. "I've called this meeting because I have some important news that affects both my role in the company and my future with the family." His father leaned back in his chair, his expression carefully neutral. "This is rather dramatic, James. I hope you haven't called us all here to discuss another one of your independent ventures. In a way, that's exactly what I'm here to discuss." James opened his briefcase and removed a folder of documents. 6 weeks ago, I learned that I have a son. His name is Oliver. He's 5 years old, and he's been living here in New York his entire life." The silence that followed was deafening. James watched as shock, calculation, and anger flashed across various faces around the table. "Excuse me?" His mother spoke first, her voice icy. "You have a child?" "Yes, with Amelia Rose, a woman I was involved with during college." "The nurse," his father said quietly, and James felt his blood chill at the recognition in Nathaniel's voice. "You know about Amelia?" "I know about Amelia Rose, yes. I also know that she was adequately compensated for any inconvenience and agreed to disappear from your life permanently." The admission hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Around the table, James could see the other board members processing this information. Some looking confused and others appearing unsurprised. "You paid her to leave," James said, his voice deadly calm. "I protected you from a situation that would have destroyed your future," Nathaniel replied. "She was pregnant." "James, a child out of wedlock with a woman of her background would have been a scandal that could have cost us millions. In stock prices, in social standing, so you bribed her to disappear. I offered her a solution that benefited everyone. She could raise her child with financial security. You could pursue your destined path without the burden of an inappropriate attachment, and the family could avoid scandal." James felt rage building in his chest, hot and consuming. "That child is your grandson?" "That child is an illegitimate heir who represents nothing but complications," his mother interjected. "James, surely you understand that we can't acknowledge this situation publicly." "I'm not asking for your acknowledgement," James said, his voice growing stronger. "I'm informing you of my decision. I intend to claim Oliver as my son legally. Intend to marry his mother, and I intend to build a life with them that may or may not include this family." "You're being emotional," David said from across the table. "James, think about what you're saying, and think about your responsibilities." "I am thinking about my responsibilities. To my son, to the woman I love, and to the future I want to build." Nathaniel leaned forward, his eyes hard. "If you pursue this course of action, you will be removed from the company. Your trust fund will be frozen. Your inheritance will be redistributed to your brother. You will get nothing from this family." "Then I'll get nothing," James replied without hesitation. "But I'll have everything that matters." He reached into his jacket and placed a second set of documents on the table. "These are the incorporation papers for my new company, Harrison Technology Solutions. It's completely independent of Harrison Industries, funded entirely through my own investments and loans. It's already profitable, and it will continue to grow, with or without this family's support." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. James had been planning his independence for years, but no one had realized how far his preparations had advanced. "You're making a mistake," his mother said, her voice trembling with anger. "You're throwing away generations of building for what? A woman who was already paid to stay out of your life? She never took your money," James said. "Not one penny. She left because she thought it was best for me, not because she was bought." "She told you that?" Nathaniel laughed coldly. "James, she deposited the check the same day I gave it to her." Words hit James like a physical blow. He stared at his father, seeing something in the older man's eyes that looked almost like triumph. "You're lying." Nathaniel reached into his own briefcase and pulled out a folder. Bank records. The check was deposited into her account on March 15th, 6 years ago. She took the money and disappeared, just as we agreed. James felt the world tilting around him. He grabbed the bank statements, scanning them quickly. There it was, in black and white. A deposit for $500,000 into an account, bearing Amelia's name and social security number. "This proves nothing," he said, but doubt was creeping into his voice. "Proves she lied to you," Patricia said, her voice gentler now. "James, we understand that learning about your son is emotional. But surely you can see that the woman has been deceptive from the beginning." "She needed the money for medical bills, for survival," James said, but he was grasping at explanations. "She needed the money for whatever she chose to spend it on," Nathaniel replied. "The point is, she took it. She made a deal and honored it for 6 years. What makes you think she won't disappear again when the situation becomes difficult?" James stared at the documents in his hands, his mind reeling. Everything Amelia had told him, all her explanations about struggling through multiple jobs, about refusing to take money from his family, about making sacrifices to protect him from having to choose between love and inheritance. Had it all been lies? "I need to see her," he said suddenly, standing up from the table. "James, don't be rash," David said. "If you confront her now while you're emotional, you might say something you regret." "What I'll regret is not getting the truth," he gathered the documents and headed for the door. Ignoring the calls from his family, to stay and discuss the situation rationally, the drive to Brooklyn had never seemed longer. James's mind raced through every conversation he had had with Amelia over the past 3 weeks, looking for signs of deception, for moments when her story had wavered or contradicted itself. But all he could remember were the small details that spoke of genuine struggle. The careful way she budgeted grocery purchases, the patches on Oliver's clothes, the worn furniture that was clearly secondhand but carefully maintained. Either she was an exceptionally gifted actress, or there was another explanation for the bank records his father had shown him. He found her in the hospital cafeteria during her lunch break, sitting alone at a small table and eating a sandwich she had brought from home. She looked up with surprise and pleasure when she saw him approaching. "James, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" Her smile was so genuine, so happy to see him, that James felt his resolve wavering, but he had to know the truth. "We need to talk," he said, sitting down across from her. "About what really happened 6 years ago." Something in his tone made her smile fade. "What do you mean?" James pulled out the bank statements and placed them on the table between them. "My father's money." Amelia looked down at the papers, and James watched all the color drain from her face. She picked up the documents with trembling hands, scanning them quickly. "James, I don't understand. I never took this money. Never even saw a check." "The bank records don't lie, Amelia." She looked up at him, and he saw something that looked like panic in her eyes. "James, you have to believe me. I never took any money from your father. I would never have taken money to leave you." "Then how do you explain a $500,000 deposit into your account?" Amelia stared at the bank statement again, and suddenly her expression changed from panic to understanding. "This isn't my account." "What?" She pointed to the account number. "James, this isn't my account. Look at the Social Security number." James leaned closer, examining the documents more carefully. The name was correct, but now that he looked more closely, the Social Security number was off by 2 digits. "There's another Amelia Rose," she said. "Quietly, my father's gambling debts, remember? He opened credit cards and bank accounts using my name and similar Social Security numbers. The creditors have been chasing accounts like this for years." The relief that flooded through James was almost overwhelming. "So you never took the money?" "I told you I never took the money." There was hurt in her voice now, mixed with anger. "James, how could you think I would lie to you about something like this?" "Because my family is very convincing and the evidence looked real. Your family—" She set the bank statements down and looked at him with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "They're still trying to control your life, aren't they? They're trying, but they can't. Not anymore." James reached across the table and took her hands in his. "Amelia, I came here prepared to confront you about lying to me. Instead, I need to apologize for doubting you. What did they say when you told them about Oliver and me? They threatened to cut me off from everything. The company, the inheritance, the family name. And what did you say?" "Right." James smiled, remembering his feeling of liberation as he walked away from that boardroom. "I said they could keep their money. I have everything I need." Amelia studied his face, seeing something there that made her heart race. "James, what are you saying?" Instead of answering with words, he pulled the small velvet box from his pocket and set it on the table between them. Around them, the hospital cafeteria continued its normal rhythm. But for James and Amelia, the world had narrowed to just the two of them and the question that hung in the air. "I'm saying that I love you," James said. "I loved you 6 years ago, and I love you now. And I love the woman you've become and the life you've built for our son. I'm saying that I want to spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost and building new memories together." Amelia stared at the ring box, tears streaming down her face. "James, your family will never accept this. It'll make our lives miserable. My family will learn to accept it, or they'll learn to live without me. Either way, that's their choice to make." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Amelia Rose, will you marry me?" She looked at the ring, then at his face, seeing in his eyes the same determination and love that had first captured her heart in college. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." As James slipped the ring onto her finger, Amelia felt as if the weight of 6 years of struggle and loneliness was finally lifting from her shoulders. They had found their way back to each other, and this time nothing would tear them apart. The wedding was small, held in the garden of a venue in Brooklyn, with just their closest friends in attendance. Oliver served as ring-bearer, beaming with pride as he carried the rings for his parents. Mrs. Patterson cried happy tears as she watched the little family she had helped nurture finally become whole. James's parents were notably absent, having maintained their position that the marriage was a mistake that would damage the family's reputation. But Antonio, James's cousin, who had always been more of a brother to him, stood as best man, and several of James's college friends traveled from around the country to celebrate as they exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. James looked into Amelia's eyes and saw their entire future reflected there. A future filled with Oliver's laughter, with quiet evenings at home, the simple joys that money couldn't buy. Harrison Technology Solutions continued to grow, eventually becoming one of the most innovative companies in the tech industry. James never returned to Harrison Industries, and while the estrangement from his parents remained a source of sadness, he found that the family he had chosen was infinitely more valuable than the one he had inherited. Oliver grew up knowing he was loved unconditionally by both his parents. He developed his father's love of technology and his mother's compassion for others, eventually following in James's footsteps to study engineering while maintaining his mother's commitment to helping people. And sometimes, on quiet Sunday mornings, when the three of them were making pancakes together and Oliver was telling them about his latest school project, James would catch Amelia's eye across their kitchen table and remember the night he had almost lost everything because he was too afraid to fight for love. They had wept in silence for too long. But now their laughter filled every corner of their home, and their love story had finally found its happy ending.